Okay, I just want to share some thoughts, a couple of questions. Um, it's the first time I've done this, so see how it goes. There's just been some things on my mind. I'd ask right up front that you kind of watch your own feelings, your own heart, as I share some thoughts, as I ask some questions, and see if you don't find yourself starting to kind of hate me because of my views, because of my thoughts. And if you notice that happening, I guess have the wherewithal to realize that's not reasonable. Um, should we really hate somebody because they disagree with us? Should we hate somebody because they have different thoughts, beliefs than we do? Um, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I guess what I'd ask, I'm a Christian. I became a Christian, um, wow, 37, about 37 years ago. Um, not because I liked church, not because I liked religious things, um, not that I like the idea of being religious. I think that's a real misnomer that a lot of people have. I became a Christian because I decided that I thought it was true, a true representation of reality, the way things are. I thought it explained the way things are better than anything else that I had heard. And over the last 37 years, it's probably the topic, it's definitely the topic I've studied more than any other subject is is there um, good reason to believe that Christianity is true? Um, doesn't matter if you like it, if I like it. The question is it true or not? I've listened to arguments against it by many, many, many people, and just not, they've all just left me want left. I felt like they were left wanting for. Um, they weren't compelling. Um, I felt like they were fringe challenges, but not really any of real substance. You may disagree, and that's absolutely right. And I will be the first to acknowledge, if you know me very well at all, I could be wrong about everything I think. This I do know that I'm definitely wrong about some things because the odds against me being right about everything I think and believe um, would just be astronomical. So I know, even as I sit here right now, there are things I'm wrong about. I just obviously don't know what those things are, which is why I try to remain open minded to anybody that I talk to. I'm very interested in talking to people about what they believe and why they believe it. Um, but I've kind of realized something um, that I think is going on that doesn't have the best ramifications. Um, we are flooded. We all know this. We're flooded with more information than at any other time in history. The amount of information coming at us from every angle, from the moment we wake up until we go to bed, is just crazy. Um, and I think one of the side effects of that has been that we have learned to skim, to scan, to um, form conclusions on very little information and very quickly. Um, we've kind of had to, but I think the downside of that is that we oftentimes don't have real good reasons for believing what we do. It could be based on a single video we watched on YouTube. And now, boy, that guy sounded like he just made a lot of sense. And now we just believe that staunchly. But the problem is that we also all know that our beliefs are based on very little information, and we're kind of ashamed of that. We're embarrassed by that. And so um, we avoid getting into situations where those ideas will be challenged, um, because we know we can't adequately defend them. We may have memorized some talking points that we heard somebody say, and we maybe will at times espouse those, um, putting up kind of a smoke screen, trying to give an impression that we really are an authority, when we know that we're not. I'm not saying that's always the case, but I think a lot of times that is the case. And so, again, I think we avoid having a conversation with anybody that we perceive might know the subject better than we do. We avoid that because we definitely do not want to be caught in a situation where our lack of information is exposed. So we avoid it. We avoid those situations unless we're pretty confident we can win or we can throw out our talking points and then get out of there. Um, but other than that, we kind of live in an echo chamber, where we're really only listening, excuse me, to people who feel the same way that we do, who will kind of bounce our ideas back and forth in a place that's safe where we're not likely to get challenged. Um, and then online algorithms ensure that you're getting videos, websites, articles, whatever, um, posts that align with what you already think, which is kind of dangerous because your ideas are not being challenged, and you're just being reinforced with the idea that wow, just boy, more and more reasons to believe what I already believe, and you just become more and more solid in it. And then even what will sneak into that too is a lot of villainizing of those who think differently, of ridiculing them, of painting them as stupid, foolish. God, it's hard to believe anybody could believe that stuff, is kind of the impression you start to get after a while. And you don't even realize you're not being exposed to the best arguments from the other side. You're not. You're watching video clips of maybe where they look foolish, where they couldn't provide a good argument, but it's all tailored um, to give you the impression that you are correct and anyone who thinks differently is wrong. And I'm not going to go so far as to say that there is a plot out there that this is all being orchestrated. Um, it might be, I don't know, but I'm not saying that I think that that's the case. But we are being given more and more of what it thinks we will like. That's the idea. And so it's sending it to us. But the point is, it's just reinforcing us in our own positions and convincing us that those who think differently are foolish. And even getting to the point where not only are they foolish, they're dangerous, which is creating this kind of anger and hostility towards those that are on the other side. And so I guess the challenge that I want to throw out there is, when was the last time that you really had a conversation with somebody who thought differently than you on some of these hot topics, where you were not trying to win an argument, but you were really trying to understand their position and why they believe that position? When was the last time you did that? We're kind of told in the guise of wisdom that you should not get into conversations with friends and family about politics or religion. Okay. Why? Because it's just going to cause arguments. It's just going to bring division. So that has the sound of wisdom. I used to think that too. I probably even recommended that to people. But I think if you examine it a little deeper, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Because what that says is, let's not challenge each other's ideas. Well, that's just a dangerous place to be in. If I've got friends and family that I trust, that I respect, like, I should be able to have dialogue with them, about things that we disagree on, because maybe I'm wrong, and I'd like to be shown that I'm shown where I'm wrong so I can correct that. I think we've gotten to a place where we're almost like, I'm okay if I'm wrong. I'm just not willing to be shown that I'm wrong. That would be too embarrassing, too shameful for me. And it's a fear. It really is. I think, that keeps us locked into the positions that we're in. Um, and then very few things will bring us out of that. Maybe some real tragedy happens in our life that really shakes us up, and our worldview feels like it's challenged. And then we are likely to, maybe at a time like that, change our view, or maybe we move to a new town, or some other big life change. We get a divorce, or um, and all of a sudden it's a place time when we're more likely to change some of those core beliefs. But otherwise, we just kind of are locked in, and we just figure, hey, who cares if I'm wrong? That's not that big a deal. Um, but the thing is that with Christianity in particular, which is the one I know the most about, um, it is a big deal. C.S. Lewis, who's one of my favorite authors, theologians, philosophers, said that, paraphrasing, I'm sure, that if Christianity is not true, then it's meaningless. Like it's completely unimportant. But if it's true, nothing could possibly be more important. And I think that does a good job of encapsulating it. Um, and so if you are not a Christian, I would just, I guess, challenge you. Have you ever really checked it out? Have you ever really sought out those who are Christians, who might be able to give you good reasons for why they think it's true? All right. And in a situation where you're not trying to win an argument or a debate with them, you're honestly just trying to say, tell me why I should take this seriously. And not only just people, because the point is, most people are not real good at giving, even Christians, good at giving you reasons for why they believe what they do. Um, I'd like to think that I'm okay at it. There's people who are a lot better than me. I'd welcome that for sure. And again, in after that, I certainly would be very interested in hearing what you have to say. Maybe even before you listen to me, we would be willing to listen to what you believe and why you think that's true, or even why you think there's no truth. I mean, there's that idea out there too, which to me makes absolutely no sense. It seems like the most illogical thing someone could ever believe. But maybe I would say maybe it's true, except that the idea is there is no truth. So, but if you're somebody who thinks that way, I would welcome a conversation where I would just try to listen and understand why you believe that. But coming back to Christianity, Christianity says some pretty radical things. Now, you don't have to believe something just because it makes radical statements. Okay, but when it's something that has been believed by hundreds of millions of people in history, including some brilliant people, um, the person in the world right now who has the highest IQ is a Christian. Again, it doesn't make it true, uh, but I would be hesitant to dismiss something too easily, that is believed by that many people, um, including very well educated people. Um, I'd be I don't think it's the best idea to dismiss it too easily, without knowing that you have listened to the best arguments that are out there. Um, you've exposed yourself to the people who are the most qualified to make a case for um, Christianity. Um, if you have done that, kudos to you. My hat's off to you. That's very respectable. Um, but I'm speaking to those who have not really done that. There are just some great people online. William Lane Craig, John Knox. Um, I'd read things by C.S. Lewis for sure, Mere Christianity. Um, Frank Turek. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. What your atheist professor doesn't know but should. I think that's the name of that. Lee Strobel, Case for Christ, Case for a Creator. What I would recommend you explore first, though, is there a God or not? I think that's the easiest thing to prove personally, but again, I could be wrong. Um, but if God does exist, the likelihood of Christianity being true, of course, goes way, way, way up. And I think trying to determine if Christianity is true before you've resolved whether or not you think it's even possible that there is a God is a little out of place. I think it's not the best way to approach it. Um, I think first you should look at whether or not you think there's good reason to believe there's a God, and then look at it. If there is a God, then Christianity is entirely possible. Miracles are possible. Um, the idea that Jesus could have been raised from the dead is possible. Um, all of that's possible if there is a God, and so I recommend that you examine that first. And there's been a lot of people who have tried to prove Christianity false, and actually wound up coming to the exact opposite conclusion, which, as you can imagine, is probably pretty embarrassing. They probably were pretty outspoken about their unbelief, and it's not real easy then to come back around and say I was wrong. Josh McDowell is one of those. Who I've read quite a few books by. Lee Strobel is another one. Um, there's I feel like there's one or two that I'm forgetting at the moment that are real obvious, but there's a number of people like that. I would seek those out. Um, but coming back to something I said a minute ago, I think I would not easily dismiss Christianity, um, because of the ramifications that are there. I like what Pascal said, and I'm going to butcher it, I'm sure, but the idea behind what Pascal's said is something called Pascal's wager. And his point was essentially that, if I'm a, become a from let's I'm not sure which one it was first. If I dismiss Christianity and I say I don't believe it, and I'm right, what have I gained? Well, maybe I gained a little bit. I would challenge that idea because I've actually been a happier, more fulfilled person since I became a Christian. Um, because I feel like I have more purpose, just a lot of different reasons. And we're not living in a time of intense persecution where could be a very different story. But like right now, um, if you wind up being right that Christianity is not true, I don't know. Maybe you gained something. Um, but if you're wrong, what has it cost you? Well, if you're wrong, if you choose to believe that Christianity is false and it turns out to be true, you have lost as much as anybody could ever imagine losing. Um, I mean, that's part of Christianity, is that God offers salvation to us through Jesus Christ, and if we reject that, it says we stand condemned, um, because we've all sinned, and without Jesus taking our sin for us, we have to basically answer for our own sin. Christianity teaches that when you stand before God, either you answer for your sin or Jesus answers for your sin because you have made him Lord of your life. You've accepted his payment on behalf of yourself. That's what Christianity teaches at its core. And so if you reject that and it turns out to be true, then you will face the judgment of God alone. And the Bible tells us what's involved in that, and I won't get into that. I don't want to try to appear to be manipulative or using scare tactics or something, but it's sobering. I do recommend you think about it. Let's look at the opposite side. Let's say that I believe Christianity is true, and it turns out that it's not. What did that cost me? Well, again, I don't think it cost me anything. I've been happier since I became a Christian. Um, but let's say, for the sake of argument, that cost me a little bit. I believed it and it was wrong, and it cost me something. Maybe I didn't have as much fun. I didn't embrace life like maybe I would have, otherwise. I'll just give you that. But let's say I believe Christianity is true and it turns out to be true. What have I gained? Well, kind of like the opposite, reject it and it turns out to be true, like the worst possible downside. If I believe it and it turns out to be true, we're talking about the best imaginable upside. Like, I can't possibly imagine anything better than that. So, on one side, the best possible upside, if I'm right, and I embrace it. And on the other side, the worst possible downside if you reject it and you're wrong. Um, if you think about it, Christianity is the infinitely safer bet, because if I believe it and I'm wrong, it hasn't really cost me much. Huge or minimal downside, huge upside. Rejecting Christianity, minimal upside, unbelievable downside. Okay, so if you were just a gambling person and in your mind, it feels like they're about equal, you should go the Christian route every single time. It is the safer bet. Okay, and you should pour yourself into, um, the reasons to believe that it's true. Again, I think you will find that, wow, there is so much, there's so many reasons to believe that it's true. But just from a gambling standpoint, I think it makes sense. And again, I don't think you should do that with just any belief. Okay. Um, but think about this. I mentioned this part already. You're talking about something that's been believed by hundreds of millions of people. It's not a fringe belief, including some of the most brilliant people in history, even today. Brilliant people. Um, the Bible, the most known, the most popular book ever written. There is no close second. Translated into more languages than any other book, um, for thousands of years. The most popular book ever written. First the Old Testament and then the New Testament. And look at Jesus, the most influential, the most known, recognized name, the most scrutinized life in all of history. The Bible, the most scrutinized, criticized, criticized not in like it's a horrible book, but in, critically looking at it to try to find flaw. No book has faced that kind of criticism. Um, no person in history has been looked at more critically than Jesus of Nazareth. But there are just so many reasons to believe it, and I'm not going into the reasons right now. Maybe I'll make another video and talk about some of the reasons that I think are the most compelling. But if you've not sought it out, if you've not, and interestingly, the Bible says that God speaking, you will find me, search for me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. The opposite being true without having said it, that if you don't, you won't. God wants those who want him. To me, it kind of seems like a different form of natural selection. He naturally selects those who want him or who are open to him, who are willing to surrender to him, by putting clues out there, but not making it overly compelling. If Christianity is true, God makes it very easy for people to miss it if they want to. But for those who want him, who are more than willing to bow the knee to him, acknowledge him as God, there's clues. And if they follow those clues, they will find more than enough reason to believe. But he can very easily weed out those who don't want him from those who do. And if God is real, we're talking about, who else is more qualified to govern the universe, and that would include you, than the wisest being who's ever existed. He's omniscient, literally knows everything. He's all powerful in that literally he can do anything, anything that requires power to do. He's timeless. He sits outside of time. So he's already seen the end from the beginning. He's seen the future. Um, he's morally perfect. Like he is good, like no other being is good. Um, he is love, perfect love. He is merciful, gracious. All of these, just his moral character makes him qualified. His attributes make him qualified. Um, and if all of that weren't enough, he's the one who created all of it. Okay, if I create something, I own it. All right. Years ago, my son and I uh, made a game, like a strategy game. We were making the game. Did we have the right to make up the rules? Since literally it was our game. If I were to build a chair myself, I owned the wood, I owned the tools, I made a chair. Do I have the right to use that chair however I want to? And if I don't like the way it feels, it's just not serving my needs. Do I have the right to burn it up if I want? Bust it into a million pieces? Absolutely. I own it. I made it. If God made the universe, can't he do with it whatever he wants? If he made us, can't he do with us whatever he wants? Um, he made life. He made the world, the universe. Doesn't he get to make up the rules? Seems to me like he does. Now, again, I'm not saying any of that's true, but I'm saying if it is true, if God exists, if Christianity is true, God has every right to tell us how to live. And if we um, give him the finger, if we say, screw you, God, I don't want to have anything to do with you, doesn't he have the right to judge us however he sees fit? I know the whole idea of somebody owning somebody else is repugnant, and I agree with that when it comes to human beings. Um, but we own dogs, we own pets. God is, if he exists again, he is higher above us than we are above a dog. He's higher above us than we are above an ant. And we'll kill an ant without a second thought. So this is all just food for thought. And again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right. And I am wrong about everything. That is entirely possible. Okay. But the difference maybe between you and me is I'm open to that. I'm willing to acknowledge that. Are you? Are you willing to seek out those who will make the best arguments for Christianity and see if they are convincing, if they're compelling? Hey, what's the worst that can happen? You walk away and you don't believe it. You don't think the arguments were compelling, but now you know what their best arguments were. Okay. You can feel more confident yourself. You can be a resource to others who are questioning. Um, but if you've never done that, if you've never allowed your beliefs to be challenged, I would just suggest that that's not very smart to dismiss something as serious as this. Um, yeah, I guess the video's a little longer than I was wanting it to be. And again, maybe I'll make another video. But in the wake of all that's going on, realize that probably most of your beliefs, maybe some of your most cherished beliefs, your hot buttons even, are based on very little information, maybe just a gut sense about it. But you know what? If Christianity is true, you know what else is true? If Christianity is true, then there are spiritual forces that don't want you to believe. And those could feel like a gut feeling. I just kind of sense that that Christianity is not true. Well, that could always be demonic. I'm not saying it's true, but I'm just saying Christianity, if it is true, that would make sense that you would have a feeling like that would think it's false, but wouldn't want to dig into it, wouldn't want to listen to those who can make a good argument for it, would want to avoid those kind of conversations. Doesn't it just make sense? Anyway, thoughts for those who are willing to entertain that. If you found yourself feeling hatred or anger towards me, reflect on the fact that that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but like I'm sincere. Um, I'm just sincerely deceived. Maybe that's all entirely possible. But anyway, food for thought.